Good evening, everybody. Isn't it a pleasant and wonderful evening? So, I started this little video and then I got interrupted. But I just want to explain certain things so some of my relatives should be aware. My grandfather, just put this in my phone out of respect for. My grandfather was George. His original name that he used in the government was John George Trump. His father, Arthur, was a Gita. So they were the ones that basically, both sides of my relatives set up the federal government when it comes to the Central Intelligence Agency, as well as MI6 and etc. One side of my family was from the Gita family. One side of my family was from the Gardner family. So I was at Columbia University. And I'm just going to get to the point because I'd like to explain this. When I did research, I was in a case study program at Columbia when I was in medical school. And then I was also, at that time, I was also at Harvard University. Those are the two universities that I was at that time, which was before the pandemic or getting to the point where the pandemic was getting bad. I met a lot of rabbis. I met a lot of imams who were with Sharia law and Zatar law. They understand religious laws to begin with. And when I started doing a lot of this research about my family history, I hit a wall. I got challenged 4 times. See, this is what I would like to explain. In the book of Revelations, in the end of this section, there is a representative called
Yahusha,
who is known as Jesus. He basically is a representation of what his father is, which his father is Lord Yahweh Shaddai. That's his father's official title. I got challenged 4 times in this Forbidden Games, in which in the practices of the ancient books, you're not allowed to play games with those games, because Abraham had rules in Zatar law is never make a deal with the devil or etc., or never play the devil in certain games. Or you may call the person Satan, you may call the person Lucifer, whatever the person is, the title is. This is the person I had to challenge, as well as pestilence, famine, and war. So those 4 deities or entities or whatever you want to decide to call them, those things challenged me, and they lost. They had showed me books that basically explained that there were licenses and there were land and etc. that was supposed to be in my name. When I was in Europe, I had a name called Michael Vito Milazzo that I had to use for the government. I had to do certain things for the federal government overseas. That name I had to use for certain things because they had me do certain things that I was undercover for doing for the government. I was considered like a private investigator. I don't know what they exactly call it, but I ended up finding out that I was doing stuff for the military and the federal government. The reason why I'm bringing this up is you had an election that happened. So Trump got elected. this is a big deal for a lot of people because he's elected president. The reason why I'm bringing up Trump is when you have in Washington, when you have the presidency, Department of Education is not a state function. It is a federal government function. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they're a federal function. All of these Department of Defense, Department of Justice, you have all these organizations that are federal. So the reason why I'm explaining this information and why I'm explaining these forbidden games and these rules and etc., he cannot just say you're going to go State Department with that position. Because I need to explain something. When I was in Harvard University, when I took case studies in law and etc., Department of Education is involved with Langley in Virginia. So your Central Intelligence Agency, your Federal Bureau of Investigation, you guys have to take continual educational courses. So when he states that you have to make it stateside, he's technically not allowed to do that. It's considered unconstitutional. You have to keep the federal government jobs have to be separate from the state. It's just like you can't have a foreign entity or a foreign government or a foreign country owning our country. You have to have certain rules and regulations. So when he says we're going to go State Department with these positions, if you're going to do that, I'm just going to explain something because I just want to make sure. Because as a person that has been studying the faith for a very long time, and a person that understands a lot of these rules and regulations, if you do that, you're going to have to make the Federal Bureau of Investigation a state-run facility, and you're going to have to make the Central Intelligence Agency a state-run facility. These are the rules and regulations of the Constitution. So I'm going to say this. You can't do that. If you start doing those things, because the AICPA and the CIMA, because they're have to do with accounting and financing, they're going to say the same thing, as well as the IFRS as well, with when it comes to Europe, which is the International Financial Reporting Standards. You cannot have a federal government position become a state position. You have to get permission from Congress and Senate. You can't just, he cannot, I'm being very honest with you, you cannot just say, I'm just going to change to the State Department. Then you're going to have to go to Langley and start explaining to those directors why you're allowed to do that. And you're going to be denied. Because you can't do anything without Department of Education approving those organizations to begin with. Because they have to have continual educational courses. If you are in the healthcare profession, if you're in the finance profession, if you're in the accounting profession, which a lot of those jobs have to deal with, you can't just make that rule. The reason why I'm bringing up these rules is it has to do with the municipality licenses as well. You had an incident where you had a Las Vegas incident where you had people that basically stole money. They committed identity theft or business identity theft or etc. You have to understand something from Department of Defense and Department of Justice. A lot of your organizations, you've, no offense, been slacking off. You need to have a separate entity, United States taxpayer, and this is not just me saying it, I'm saying it with people that I think would have a similar opinion. You need to have a separate entity where, just like the AICPA has, where you have a separate organization